to be more inclusive? So Gregory, I'll start with you.
All right. So,
no, they have to answer as well.
Come next. Listen, we focus on hiring and retaining the best talent in our organizations. Mm-hmm. We run like a professional team. And to do that and achieve that, you cannot discriminate against age, sex, identity, priorities, and when you approach business and market as a whole, there are pockets of businesses and pockets of opportunity that fit well and align well with that level of diversity. Opportunities come from having diversity in thought, leadership style, practices, and therefore we have embedded very clear guidelines in our HR policy that's written, and that we should have no discrimination. Age, gender, identity, preferences, color, sex, you name it. Okay? So that is clear in our policies. But I think from a business standpoint, better decisions are made when you have very diverse people with that very diverse thoughts. And so we are 100% behind ensuring that we have a very diverse organization.
Fantastic, fantastic. One of the measures that shifts cultural change around DEI is inclusivity, of course, and feeling that you're part of an organization that is aligned with values. So John, I'll ask you to speak a little bit about that, because clearly you've changed your whole business model on a values-based proposition. Can you share a little bit about your DEI journey?
Yeah, so quite interestingly, last week we spent as a family, because we're a family-owned business.
Yes.
So when we throw capital into any one area, we don't really have anybody to account to but ourselves. So it's really nice to be able to make those decisions. And likewise, in that retreat last week abroad as a family, we got into a lot of this discussion. And you really can't filter into your organization that flavor of diversity and inclusion unless it starts with the family, for a family-owned business. So there are simple things that we had to look deep within ourselves and ask. For instance, are we creating as a family equal opportunity for the female in Gen 2? Because there are 3 men at the top. And are we creating in Gen 2 enough opportunity for our female family members? And how are we going to think about that in terms of ownership as well as executive membership as we go? So that was one interesting thing. And the second thing, I want to go into our organization. We believe that this thing about diversity is only one part of the equation. Inclusion is really the critical thing. Because you can tick a lot of boxes around diversity and really don't bring people in. And I want to make this point, it's all around psychological safety. Because with psychological safety comes execution and productivity. And when you talk about diversity and inclusion, you talk about productivity, if you want to get to the pragmatic side of it. So yes, and a simple example of that is that we looked at our organization knowing very well that they're members of the LGBTQ community within our company. How can we preach that without extending insurance coverage for them? Medical insurance coverage for them and their partners. So when we looked at it, we discovered that if you go the normal route, that the law states that an insurance company that offers that cannot essentially include a partner of same sex. So what do? We come out of the normal system, we go self-managed, we hire a company to help us self-manage the insurance, and then we offer it to our LGBT. So that's a very good example, I think, of self-management.
Following on from that question, though, I mean, you all at TADCO have the wherewithal to make those decisions to benefit your members of staff, and that's a privilege. It's a privilege. But we have to think about our wider society as well. I think it's important that you set an example but all of us have a responsibility as well, and that's just a point I want to share with the audience, because at the end of the day, we can talk headline, diversity, equity, inclusion, but what are we doing within our businesses to really make that happen in a tangible way? So Mark, traditionally, the energy sector has been very male-dominated. A little bit. So can you share a little bit about NGC's diversity, equity, and inclusion journey? And tell me a little bit about how, that is enhancing your value proposition as a company.
Well, I guess I have to start from our board. I think there's improvement to be made in that area. If you take our leadership team, it's probably like 1/3 of the leadership is now female. And of course, if you start to count internal audit, internal audit is here as well. Separate from the management, it's also female. So I would say when it comes to, like Gregory said, we are focusing a bit more on, before I would say we would have been a bit more reactive and responsive to the needs of when you needed people. And I think what is going on now in the company is you see a shift of looking ahead for the future and seeing what is needed in a sort of a strategic pipeline. And I think this is where we need to incorporate the vision, the values, the inclusivity. So rather than just responding to a vacancy now, I think we are getting into a whole system of succession planning, high potentials, diversity, inclusion, and I think that is, we haven't reached where that should take us yet, but I think we are starting that journey. I know what we call our HR department has now been changed to people, leadership, and culture. So we say PLC, we don't say HR anymore. So I would say Gillian, who is sitting at the table there, has already started conversations looking at even Paralympic athletes and things like that, and how we incorporate in our business. I mean, there are things like that going on. But I would say it starts with having a very deliberate focus in these areas and even reporting it in our sustainability report. So we've started with the gender, but I think if you start to expand going forward, you'll see some of these things happening more and more.
Thank you for your candor. I really appreciate that. And because, one of the things about ESG is that it's a journey. And you have to start somewhere. And so long as we have that mindset, the sky is the limit. And we're always constantly improving. So part of this discussion is really focused on creating that ESG thinking, ESG ecosystem. That was the headline of the panel. And we in Trinidad and Tobago, like many other countries,